No family, no future, my brother said before stealing what was meant for mine. He turned the whole family against me, forged my name, and erased me from our father's legacy. But buried beneath the silence was a truth my dad left behind, and with it I brought their lies crashing down. Welcome to Storytime Reddit, everyone. I never thought I'd be the one to pour everything out, but after the nightmare that was Christmas morning, I need to get this off my chest. It all started when I showed up at my mom's house right on time, 10 a.m., just like she told me in her text. But the moment I stepped through the door, the place was already a mess of torn-up wrapping paper, empty dishes being cleared, and my nephew Christian completely absorbed in his new video game setup. They hadn't waited for me. Even though Mom had clearly said we'd all be gathering at 10, the celebration had obviously started hours earlier. That sinking feeling of being left out hit me like a punch to the chest. Mom hugged me with that same familiar warmth, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Gabriella, my brother's wife, barely looked up from her phone, muttering, "Oh, you made it," like I was some distant acquaintance crashing their holiday. I set my gifts down under the tree, trying to ignore the cold tension in the air. The only one genuinely happy to see me was Christian. He ran up to show me his new gaming controller with a big grin. That small flicker of joy didn't last long. Andrew, my brother, sneered and said, "Don't bother Uncle Dominic. He probably doesn't get these things anyway, too busy with his dreamer lifestyle." I swallowed my response and forced a faint smile, like I always do. I've gotten used to it. I live alone, work remotely for a tech company, and travel often. I don't have a wife or kids, but I'm content with the life I've built. When Dad was still around, he always supported me doing my own thing, even if it didn't look like the path Andrew took. But since Dad passed away in October, the snide remarks have only grown more frequent and more venomous. Things really started to go downhill during lunch. Mom made Dad's traditional Christmas roast, the first one since he passed, and the whole table was uncomfortably quiet, like they were bracing for someone to make the first move. Gabriella fired the first shot. "So, Dominic, no special someone yet? I mean, at your age, you should be thinking about settling down. Christian needs cousins his age." Before I could say a word, Andrew jumped in. "Oh, please, he's too busy living the bachelor dream. No wife, no kids, no real life, am I right?" He chuckled, but his tone was cutting. The way everyone else just nodded or avoided eye contact made it painfully clear they'd discussed this before. I kept my cool, took a bite of food, and calmly said, "Actually, my life's pretty full. I'm happy with the choices I've made." Gabriella didn't miss a beat. "Full of what? Staring at a computer screen all day? Eating dinner alone in hotel rooms? That's not living, Dominic. That's just wasting your potential." I looked her straight in the eyes, my voice colder than I intended. "Don't tell me what Dad would have wanted." The air went ice cold. Mom tried to deflect by asking about New Year's plans, but Andrew wouldn't drop it. He leaned in closer like he was letting me in on a big family secret. "Look, we need to be realistic. The will reading is next week. You've got savings, no responsibilities. Meanwhile, I'm trying to give Christian the best future possible. It's just not fair." That's when I noticed Mom's expression guilt. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My heart started to race as I asked, "What do you mean, realistic? About what?" And when Gabriella opened her mouth again, I finally understood I'd already been betrayed. I drove back to my apartment with my mind completely blank. Everything from that Christmas lunch kept replaying in my head like a broken tape on loop. The words, "You're just someone no one in this family needs," coming from my brother hit like a knife straight to the heart. But what hurt even more was the slow, painful nod from my mother. She didn't defend me. She didn't deny what they said. I had never felt more alone in the very home I grew up in. As soon as I got home, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Messages, calls, voicemails pouring in one after another, mostly from my mom. "Come back home, let's talk. We're still a family. Don't make this a bigger deal than it is." Andrew's message was short and typical. "You need to grow up and face reality." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my contacts and searched for a name I had only ever called once, Mr. Wilson, my father's private attorney. After a few rings, his voicemail came on. I left a message. "This is Dominic, Charles's son. I think I need to schedule a meeting as soon as possible. It's about something serious regarding the will." I sat on my couch, the room quiet except for the dim glow of a lamp and the distant hum of traffic. My thoughts drifted back to my last conversation with Dad. He was in bed, his hand cold but still managing to hold mine. He said, "No matter what happens, stand your ground, and if you have to, protect this family even if it means standing against them." At the time, I thought he was just rambling because of the meds. I didn't realize he was warning me. I remembered another thing he used to say, that some things matter more than family things like integrity and honor. And now, the very people I trusted most had stolen from me, trampled the trust I gave them. I couldn't just sit back. That night, I didn't sleep. I went through every financial document I had, the scanned copies my dad had sent me over the years, even some half-written emails he never sent. One of them had a short note scribbled across the bottom. If things get out of control, call Mr. Wilson. Dad had prepared for this. Maybe he had heard Andrew whispering things. Maybe he had seen Gabriella's scheming. Maybe he just sensed the dangerous silence in Mom's eyes. I didn't know exactly what they'd done yet, but my gut told me it was worse than I imagined. It wasn't just about borrowing a little from my share of the inheritance. No, this was calculated. They had taken advantage of Dad while he was sick, and now that he was gone, they were exploiting his absence to divide the assets like I didn't even exist. I wasn't going to let that happen. Tomorrow, I would meet with Mr. Wilson. I'd finally learn what was really happening behind the curtain of this warm, picture-perfect family. They wanted to talk about responsibility, about sacrifice for family. Fine, I was ready to talk. But this time, it would be with facts, receipts, and everything my father left behind. And I swear I won't let anyone in this family disrespect my father's legacy or walk all over me ever again. The next morning, I showed up at Mr. Wilson's law office early. My mind was a mess somewhere between anger, anxiety, and the faintest sliver of hope that maybe things weren't as bad as I feared. But the moment Mr. Wilson looked at me like he'd been expecting this meeting for a long time, I knew it was bad. He opened with a sentence that sent a chill down my spine. I figured you'd call. Your father prepared for this. On the desk was a thick stack of documents. As he pulled each one out, reading through line after line, every word burned through what little trust I had left in my family. They were loan contracts withdrawals from the inheritance, trust my father had set up specifically for me. The total taken? Over $285,000. What shocked me even more was that all of the paperwork was in my name, with my signature, except I never signed a single one of them. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. The signatures were sloppy, didn't look like mine at all, but were just convincing enough to pass. Mr. Wilson confirmed it. All of them were forged. The person behind it, none other than Andrew. He had used temporary access to Dad's medical and financial records to get the information he needed. Worse, he leveraged Mom's trust, pretending it was for Christian to justify the shady moves. There's more, Mr. Wilson said, pulling out a sealed brown envelope marked with my father's initials. Your father updated his will just 2 weeks before he passed. He suspected Andrew. I could barely breathe. In the letter, my father wrote clearly that anyone who took money from the trust without authorization would have to repay it in full before receiving any further inheritance. And the person he appointed to oversee that process was me. I couldn't believe it. My father, the quiet, observant man, had seen everything. He didn't say anything while he was alive, but he acted. In a handwritten note attached to the letter, he wrote, "You're the only one who truly understands the value of money. You know what real responsibility looks like without needing to wear a mask of moral superiority." I was almost frozen in my seat as Mr. Wilson shared one final thing. Just a month before my dad died, Andrew had tried to convince him to legally declare me financially incompetent to manage my share. He was laying the groundwork to take everything. The snide remarks from Christmas lunch suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't just casual jabs. They were part of a bigger plan to erase me from the picture. When I stepped out of Mr. Now Tend Wilson's office, it had started drizzling. I sat in my car for a long time, staring down at my father's letter again. The last lines hit me straight in the heart. They will use emotion to bind you. They'll call you selfish, accuse you of abandoning the family, but remember, doing the right thing is rarely easy. Sometimes real love means forcing people to face the consequences. My phone buzzed again. A message from Gabriella. "We need to talk." There are things you don't understand. I turned off the screen. At this point, I understood everything all too well. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was the responsibility my father left behind. The truth had to come out, and I wouldn't back down. That night, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove to my father's old house, the one that used to be a warm family home before everything fell apart. The place was eerily quiet. The wind chimes he loved still hung by the windows, but they no longer made a sound. I stepped into the garage, following the instructions from Dad's letter. Back shelf, behind the paint cans in the safe, he had written. The dim yellow light cast long shadows on the walls as I knelt down, brushing away years of dust until my fingers found a small safe locked with a combination I knew by heart my birthday. My heart pounded as I opened it. There wasn't money inside or any valuable object. Just another handwritten letter, a few USB drives, and one thick notebook marked in red ink. Andrew's debt. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the book. Page after page, each entry detailed a loan Andrew had taken from Dad over the years, not just from my inheritance, but from our parents' joint savings too. The early amounts were just a few $1,000s here and there, but they kept growing. By the last page, the total surpassed $400,000. I felt dizzy. I plugged the USBs into my laptop. Dozens of audio files appeared, each time-stamped. My dadman, who used to spend quiet evenings in the workshop, had been recording everything. In one recording, I heard Andrew's voice, sharp and calculated. Dom's signature isn't hard to fake. He never reads the fine print anyway. I couldn't breathe. Then came Dad's weak, weary voice. Don't do this, son. You have your own family. Let Dominic's share be. But Andrew just laughed. Every second of that recording felt like a knife to the chest. Now I understood why Dad made me the trustee of the will. He didn't choose me because I was the perfect son. He chose me because he knew I was the only one clear-eyed enough not to be manipulated by guilt or fake pleas for help. He knew exactly who Andrew was, but he stayed silent, hoping maybe one day my brother would change. And when that hope died, he made sure all the evidence was ready. I gathered everything in the safe, backed up the files, and called Mr. Wilson to let him know I'd found what Dad left behind. Good, he said. Now we have everything we need to protect you and your mother's share as well. I nodded, though all I felt was pain. I never imagined I'd be the one tasked with protecting my family from my own brother. When I got home, there was a message from Mom. They're coming over tomorrow morning. We need to talk as a family. I stared at the thick file, the audio recordings, and the debt ledger spread out in front of me. It all felt like a final reminder from Dad. Love isn't always about forgiveness. Sometimes it's about having the courage to tell the truth even when it hurts. Tomorrow would be a turning point. I didn't know whether I'd be met with denial, tears, or more betrayal. But one thing I was certain of, I wasn't backing down, and this time, I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for my father, the man who tried to protect us all, right up to his final breath. The next morning, I parked outside my mom's house with my heart pounding like a drum. 3 unfamiliar cars were lined up near the driveway, and my gut told me this wasn't going to be a simple family conversation. When I walked into the house, it wasn't just Andrew and Gabriella waiting. Aunt Linda, Uncle Pete, and a sharply dressed man with a briefcase neatly balanced on his knee were also there. I instantly recognized him, the financial advisor Andrew always referred to as the trustworthy one. The air in the room was cold, like a courtroom had been staged, and I was the defendant. Andrew spoke first, full of smug confidence. Good, you're here. Now we can finally talk about fixing the mess you're making with Dad's will. I didn't respond. I just quietly sat in Dad's old leather chair by the window, the one he used to read the newspaper in every morning. I could almost feel his strength behind me. We've all been talking, Andrew continued, motioning to the others like they were some kind of judgment panel. And we think what Dad left behind is causing unnecessary division. So here's our proposal. The advisor handed over a folder. According to their plan, Andrew and Gabriella would gain immediate access to the full inheritance, including my share to manage the family's assets more effectively. In return, they promised to repay the loan within 5 years and maintain everyone's best interests. I let them finish. Then, calmly, I reached into my bag and pulled out the ledger I had found in Dad's safe. I flipped to a page marked in red. Before we go any further, maybe we should talk about a small matter, the Mountain View property. The room fell silent like someone had cut the power. I caught Aunt Linda glancing away. Andrew tensed, interrupting quickly. That's irrelevant. Mom inherited that property. I nodded, then read aloud. Last April, Andrew used Mom's power of attorney to take out a second mortgage on the Mountain View property while Dad was in the hospital. No signature from Mom, and that property, it's now in pre-foreclosure. Mom dropped her tissue, her eyes wide in disbelief, voice trembling. What? That property belonged to your father and me? It was our retirement plan. Gabriella tried to jump in. It was temporary. We needed capital for an investment opportunity. I turned to the advisor. Were you the one who helped them process this? Your firm's logo is on the file. He said nothing, quietly gathered his papers, and stood up. Mom began sobbing. I turned to Andrew, my voice sharp. You also opened 3 credit cards in Mom's name. One was used for furniture, the other 2 for tuition and online gambling. Andrew shot up. You had no right digging into my personal affairs. I kept my tone level. I do, because this involves the inheritance, trust, and family assets, and I'm the one legally appointed to protect them. Gabriella stood, voice snapping. Who do you think you are? Some childless, wandering loner? You have no right to judge us. I said only one thing. I have no debt. The 2 of you owe everyone in this room. Just as I finished speaking, a small voice echoed from the stairs. Is it true you took my college money too? Everyone turned. Christian stood there, holding his phone, his face full of disappointment. I recorded everything, he said, voice shaking. A 12-year-old child had just confirmed the truth, and no one else in that room could say a word in their defense. When Christian's voice rang out from the stairs, the entire room froze. He stood there small, skinny, still holding his trembling phone. I recorded everything, he repeated, and no one could say a word. My mom's eyes were red, and she turned away, unable to look at him. Gabriella's mouth hung open, while Andrew clenched his fists in rage but didn't dare take a step forward. No one did. Because the truth had been exposed, and this time, it came from the very child they'd tried to trap in a lie. Christian walked slowly down the stairs, his eyes wet with tears, but his gaze steadier than I'd ever seen. He wasn't the naive little kid I used to play video games with during the holidays. He was a boy who had just discovered his parents had betrayed the entire family, including him. He came to sit beside me, quietly resting his hand on the armrest of Dad's old chair. That small gesture hit me like a punch to the chest, but it also gave me a strange, quiet strength. In that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I pulled out the final set of documents from my bag. It was the updated version of my father's will, complete with clauses requiring full repayment of any misused funds before anyone could access their inheritance. I opened the first page, placed it flat on the table, and said each word clearly. This mess was not created by me. It was born from greed, lies, and secrets. And this is the only plan that can save what's left of this family. I listed the terms. The Mountain View property would be immediately placed under trust management to stop it from going into foreclosure. All credit cards opened under my mother's name would be canceled. Whatever remained of Christian's college fund would be moved into a protected account locked until he turned 18. And as for Andrew and Gabrielle, they still wanted any part of the inheritance. They would have to enroll in mandatory financial counseling starting next week. Gabriella shot to her feet. You don't have the right to order us around, I replied calmly. No, but the court does. And I have more than enough evidence to make this a criminal case if necessary. Andrew sneered. You're really going to take your own brother to court? That's how you honor Dad? My mother still said nothing. The tears kept streaming down her face, but then Christian spoke again, voice shaky. Dad, I don't want to show the school what I recorded, but if you don't sign, I will. The room went dead silent. Andrew went pale, his clenched hands now limp at his sides. No one had expected that the child they thought they could manipulate would be the one to dismantle their entire web of deceit. Gabriella signed first, avoiding eye contact, her hand visibly trembling. Andrew signed next, this handwriting crooked, full of rage and humiliation. But in that moment, the only thing on my mind was Christian. He turned to me and whispered, Uncle Dom, can I stay with you for a few days? I don't want to be here anymore. I nodded and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. You're always welcome with me. As I left my mom's house, no one said goodbye. She stood behind the curtain, her eyes foggy, whether from tears or regret, I'll never know. I didn't look back. Because after today, this family would never be the same again. But at least now, the truth was out. And I had chosen to stand on the right side of it, even if it meant letting go of every illusion we once called peace. The next morning, just as I was finishing my first cup of coffee, my phone started buzzing nonstop. The first message came from Mr. Wilson. He's made his move. Everything's happening exactly as we expected. I immediately opened my laptop and logged into the financial account Mom had been using. There it was. Andrew had attempted to withdraw every remaining dollar from her accounts. He thought I'd let my guard down after the family meeting, that Mom's silence would soften me, but he was wrong. I had frozen all the accounts the night before. This time, what he did wasn't just morally wrong, it was criminal. I forwarded the full access logs and failed transaction report to Mr. Enclasted Wilson, who replied simply, "We're ready to proceed with full legal action." But the biggest shock came later that afternoon when Mr. Wilson video called me and played an audio file I'd never heard before. It was my dad, speaking from his hospital bed, his voice weak but steady, pleading with Andrew. "Why are you doing this? That money's for Christian's education, for your mother's retirement. You don't have to lie or forge Dominic's signature. Just stop." Andrew's response was chilling. "I'm the one who should be managing the money. Dominic's useless. I'm just taking back what's mine." I listened, frozen, as my quiet, gentle father had to endure hearing his own son admit to stealing from his family right before he passed. Any last shred of doubt I had disappeared. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. This was betrayal, plain and simple. What followed was like watching dominoes fall one by one. We submitted all the evidence, fake signatures, financial fraud, abuse of power of attorney to the proper authorities. Within 48 hours, Andrew was suspended from his job. A former coworker even sent me security footage showing Andrew's stunned face when he was pulled into a room for questioning. It was oddly satisfying. Gabriella wasn't about to go quietly either. She started calling friends, neighbors, anyone who'd listen, painting me as the villain who tore the family apart. What she didn't know was that the financial advisor from our family meeting had secretly recorded everything. He was the first to step forward with proof of the shady investment scheme she and Andrew had been running for years. Christian, meanwhile, blew me away. He sent the full audio of the family meeting to his school, along with a heartfelt apology for his parents' behavior. Not only did the school not expel him, they awarded him emergency financial aid. They also launched an audit of the bogus charity donations Andrew and Gabriella had claimed on their taxes. Spoiler alert, those donations never existed. When it all came crashing down, Mom finally saw the truth. But instead of owning up, Andrew blamed her too, saying she'd approved everything. That's when I played the final card, Dad's last recording, a full confession from Andrew, quietly captured just days before his death. Every mask came off. All that remained was the truth, raw, painful, but necessary. I wasn't after revenge, I just wanted accountability, and now there was nowhere left for them to hide. It's been 2 weeks since that final confrontation. I didn't wait to write this because I needed to gloat. I waited to be sure it was truly over, but over isn't quite right. It was a collapsy total, deserved one. After all the evidence was submitted, Andrew tried one last desperate move. He went to Mom, trying to guilt her into saying she had approved everything, blaming her for not managing the money. But this time, she didn't defend him. When Mr. Wilson and I met her to finalize everything, she gave me a letter Dad had written to her years ago. It said, "If the truth ever hurts you, let it touch you once then, let it go." That day, Mom finally stepped aside. She signed every legal document, revoked Andrew and Gabriella's access, and transferred control of all family assets to me just as Dad had intended. She even reported that she'd been manipulated into signing false financial documents under Andrew's pressure. That same day, I purchased the Mountain View property at full market value, not to own it, but to protect it. I made sure Mom would have a secure retirement and that Andrew would never touch the house again. I'm converting it into affordable housing for single parents and students. And yes, I added a clause. Andrew and Gabriella are permanently banned from renting, living, or being on any lease tied to the property. Call it petty, I call it closure. Gabriella tried to play the victim. She hosted a press conference, claiming I destroyed the family, but Christian posted screenshots of her messages, proving she was planning to scam other relatives. That shut everything down. She was cut off socially and now faces 3 civil lawsuits. Andrew was fired from his job, lost his country club membership, and their dream home is in foreclosure. As for Christian, I now have full temporary custody. The court didn't hesitate after hearing recordings of Andrew threatening his own son. Christian moved in with me shortly after. In his room, we hung a framed quote from Dad's final letter: "Kindness isn't always silence. Sometimes, it's standing up when no one else will." He's doing better new friends, improved grades, even joined the school's finance club. One day, he said, "I want to study finance so no one can ever do to me what they did. Our Sunday dinners are quiet now, just Mom, Christian, and me. Fewer people, but far more peace. No more fake smiles or whispers, just honesty. I don't see myself as the winner. I'm just the one who refused to stay silent." And like Dad once said, Sometimes love means letting someone lose everything they stole so they can finally find something worth keeping.